we now have the ability, we have it within our hands to create the world over again. And when I realized what cryptography was, how it worked, and that we could essentially put walls around ourselves and be protected from anybody and anything with insane levels of encryption that are easy to use, we've got Terra Nova. We can make this world any way we want it to be. Oh my God.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Os habla Lunaticoin y bienvenidos a mi podcast. At a time when there is so much noise around the price of Bitcoin, where it seems it can only be used as a speculative financial derivative on platforms that will never let you withdraw it or use it outside their oversight, it's especially refreshing to sit down with someone who has been living these ideas, the ideas of Bitcoin, since even the very beginning of the internet back in the 80s. Someone who already in the 90s felt the need of a digital cash. Someone who in the early 2000s imagined what a world would look like with Satoshi's invention and the decentralized markets that it would enable. And someone who, after witnessing its birth in 2009, the rise of Silk Road in 2011, or the appearance of Lightning and BTC Pay Server in 2017, cannot understand how we still don't realize that we have already won. That someone is Paul Rosenberg, writer and early cypherpunk, who a couple of months ago gave me a much-needed wake-up call through his novel A Lodging of Wayfaring Men, a book written back in 2002 in which he predicted the arrival of Bitcoin, the decentralized markets, and how governments would react to such a direct attack on their commercial monopoly. And in today's episode, I'm fortunate to sit down with Paul to talk about everything he's lived since his very first encounter with the internet, and why even state slaves feel uncomfortable when the subject of taxes comes up. An inspiring conversation that reminds us why we are in Bitcoin and also helps us realize, I hope, that we have already won, that we must fear less and coordinate more to seize the freedom we already reached with these technologies. I made this episode primarily for my Spanish-speaking audience, but here you will find the original version. If you speak Spanish, I encourage you also to check the AI dub version I did. I hope it's also as good, at least. Adventures like this, where I put meticulous work on translation, voiceovers, and editing, are possible thanks to your support on Patreon and also through the value-for-value contributions received via Podcasting 2.0 apps like Fountain, Nostr, or Seed Hypermedia. Thank you so much for that. And of course, this podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of my tireless sponsors, HODL, CoinKite, Bitrefill, and Bittronix. All of them are Bitcoin-focused companies that I personally use, and I'll briefly talk about them during the episode so you can take away a piece of valuable content about what they do. Paul!
Hi!
Welcome and thank you for joining today. I have to tell you that I've been hyping all Spanish Bitcoin Twitter, let's say, about your book, The Lodging of Wayfaring Men, that it's going to be soon published in Spanish, this week, in fact, in Spanish, under the name Una Posada para Caminantes. It's a very interesting translation. Maybe we'll get into that later. But I have to tell you that I've been crossing your name a few times. In fact, I was watching videos that you made in the past without realizing it was you. It was not the author of A Lodging of Wayfaring Men. But yeah, it was last summer I had a conversation with Max Hillebrand and then also with Paul Luptak and with few common friends. And then Entropy told me that he was about to publish it. And I said, okay, it's all signal. I have to read it. But before we talk about the book, I wanted to start to get to know you a little bit better. Who is Paul Rosenberg?
Oh, boy.
An easy question.
Yeah, how do you answer that one? A kid from the north side of Chicago, I suppose. I grew up in the construction business. My dad was a contractor. I grew up in that. I ended up in the electrical business for many years, and I did all kinds of stuff in that business. And I ended up morphing from there into fiber optics and cryptography. And I made a living doing that for quite a while. And then I just, along the way, I ran into all sorts of really interesting intellectual sort of history sorts of things. And I ended up as one of the early cypherpunks and other associated groups. I was big into cryptography. I ran a company called Crypto Hippie for quite a few years. We were we were an anonymity network is what we really were. A professional sort of VPN. And I've been writing for years on history, science, philosophy, and associated topics.
You describe yourself as an early cypherpunk, which is not an easy thing to say because it was not a very crowded place at the time. Nowadays, it's a very well-known name, or at least in my small echo chamber of Bitcoiners.
Oh, no, we were like crazy people.
And I don't know, we're looking the world with our perspective, and we wake up and one of the first things we do is to take our smartphone and we are already connected. We didn't stop being connected even while sleeping. So we live in this digital world. But back then, internet even was not that common. It was something that not everybody had. And I wanted to ask you, because this is something I read a lot. And I remember the first moment I had my first computer with internet at home, and it was somehow in my mind, it felt like I had a window to the world. Really, that room used to be like a dead end, like in all the rooms. You have a door and you enter and you exit. But from that moment, it felt like, no, it's not a dead end anymore. That room has a window to the world. But I want to ask you how it was your first encounter with the digital frontier, with cyberspace.
Sure, let's see. The first time I really encountered it at all would have been in 1985, 86, and working in a back room where guys had an actual telephone receiver on, a modem, which I think it was probably 300 or 600 baud in those days. I don't remember precisely. But they were sending messages to other guys somewhere else. That's pretty cool. Kind of see what you guys are doing. Yeah, come look. Then probably about 89, I got a computer that was actually connected to bulletin board systems. It was a dual floppy, didn't have any hard drive at all. You had to load the operating system in one drive and then use the other drive with, the big disks.
Yeah, floppy disk.
Yeah, the big floppies to work. But it was wonderful to get on these bulletin board systems. Even in, I was living in Chicago at the time, and even in a place like that where there's all kinds of action, still, you were finding people you'd never meet in real life. People in other countries, people here. I remember there was one guy who was an expert on Egypt. I mean, he was actually working in archaeological digs in Egypt. And you could talk to the guy and ask him questions. How are you doing this? How do you do this? How can you tell the difference between X, Y, Z, and ABC? And it was awesome. And then about 93 or so, somewhere in that area, the actual internet opened up to the point where people were actually getting on it besides just, real techies. And I was busy in those years, surviving. But that was just another step beyond. Also, we used to use Usenet groups, which were, email lists. Usenet groups were awesome. They were the thing. And so there were lots of Usenet groups, and all of us who were interested got in a whole bunch of different ones. And that was, to me, the most exciting time of the whole routine. Because there were new ideas and new things that you hadn't been exposed to before. And, some of them were silly, some of them were nasty, some of them were this, but some of them were brilliant. And these were people who had actual things to say, could come out and play. and they wouldn't be shut down. The other people would listen to them and sometimes agree, sometimes disagree, but they would have, reasonable, rational, sometimes brilliant comments to add. It was a very exciting time. So I began with that, and I was involved in a variety of the news groups. Cypherpunks was one. I was on that for a little while, but mostly we cross-linked from different groups. We cross-posted. Somebody say, I'm going to post Cypherpunks on Saturday. Fine. But there were all sorts of groups that were there. Gold and silver guys. There were the perpetual travelers who were doing what we now call jurisdictional arbitrage. These were the original guys. All sorts of groups, and it was a gas. It was really, really interesting and really fun.
How it was in your mind? I explained you this story about me, like I felt that I opened a window. Did you also, something change inside you?
Yeah, it was, I don't know if it was as much as a single event as a whole bunch of boom, 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 boom events. What it really was, and I wish I would have known this quote at the time, and I didn't, but it perfectly encapsulates what we were feeling. And it's a quote from Thomas Paine in 1776 when the American Revolution was at its peak. And he says, we now have the ability, we have it within our hands to create the world over again. And when I realized what cryptography was, how it worked, and that we could essentially put walls around ourselves and be protected from anybody and anything with insane levels of encryption that are easy to use, we've got Terra Nova. We can make this world any way we want it to be. Oh my God. This hasn't happened since, the opening of North America in the 1600s. Wow, this is here. It's now in front of, here it is. Whoa, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and I love this concept. I've been talking a lot about it before we were talking about this book that is here, Cryptoria, which goes from Turing to Nakamoto. And it is about all the computing history and also the opening of this. In this book, when I was talking to the author, we were talking that the internet, it's kind of like a portal to a new world. You call it Terra Nova, but it's a portal we crossed, and that's when I love these words that we use to talk about the internet. We talk about the digital frontier, or it's because it was a border that we crossed, and it was a new world, and then we can understand that all what is happening in internet nowadays with governments trying to take control is basically a little bit like Avatar movie. So it's a new world we discover. And again, there is free things that people can do and enjoy the world. But then the same guys as usual come and they try to rule. They try to impose and to control. Probably you have seen this clearly, how internet changed from the very beginning to what maybe is nowadays.
Yeah, we used to have a term for it called elite capture. And, we built it. Here it is. And then these guys want to come in and take over. The funny thing is they haven't actually captured the internet, at least not terribly. What they've done is put everybody into pens that are around the internet. Like a few years ago, I posted some kind of post that, probably would have been disliked in certain areas, probably would have got me kicked off of something or another. I'm not on any social media. But I got an email from a guy and he said, I'd said that exact same thing and got kicked off of Reddit. And I realized, and I, again, made another post on this, but the point is Reddit and Facebook and Instagram and all the others, they're not actually the internet. They're attached to the internet. But they've got a bottleneck that somebody can squeeze, and which they did specifically during the COVID time. If you didn't keep the party line, you were out, and none of the free speech guys said a word. So, the internet itself is still there, it still works, but unfortunately, people have been pushed into Facebook and Google and all these other monopolists. But I think it's coming back. I think people will begin leaving them. I mean, social media, if you look at the effects of social media addiction, specifically on teenage girls, it's horrifying. It's horrifying. So I think, social media is probably the new smoking. I don't know how it is in Europe these days, but in the States, almost nobody smokes anymore. I was at a thing about a year ago, some little get together, and somebody pulled out a cigarette, and I was like, oh, I haven't seen that in a long time. Huh, okay. But not too many people smoke here anymore. So I'm hoping that social media goes the way of that. I like Nostr, but social media outside of that is pretty much, I got to appreciate Musk for what he did, but social media is very largely, run by monopolists who are trying to squeeze more clicks and more attention out of every human brain. And I don't think it's a good thing.
So if internet is this terra nova, this brand new planet that we discovered, and it's for us to take. In fact, it was users who discovered it. This Meta, Facebook, Twitter, it's kind of like resorts, wall gardens that they build there, and they have like certain rules, no? And it feels that people don't use the planet. They just use these resorts, these big hotels, and they accept the benevolent dictator. Sometimes they are benevolent, sometimes they are not so benevolent. But not to deviate too much from the topic, you mentioned cryptography, because internet is one thing, but of course, beginning of the 90s with PGP and so on, cryptography started to be publicly used. How it was for you? Which was your aha moment with cryptography? You said before that the use of cryptography made you understand that this is a terra nova. Why so?
Right. It was when I really began to understand and use PGP. PGP was in the early 90s, 92, 93, where it really became something. And I didn't get there till about 95. But when I really saw what this was, and then, like almost everybody did, said, oh, we need money for this. Because we already had communication. That we got. We had email, we had Usenet, we had whatever. You could do it over radio if you wanted to. And we had, public key encryption, which is, wow, magic. We can do this. And then you go, well, we can communicate really well, but we need some money. And then we can really do something. So that was the thing that we all knew. We all knew it was necessary. We talked about 1,000 different things, but we knew that money was a big thing. But when I really discovered that PGP was there and it was not hard to use, I was like, okay, we're good. We can actually do this. This was really exciting.
So you connect the knowledge of cryptography in those early days with this other knowledge or research for a native currency of the internet. So you feel that it was connected in a way.
Oh, absolutely. Because once you actually use this stuff, you start using it, you're sending messages back and forth. Well, these people become your friends. They become people you share a lot of interests with. And pretty soon, hey, I saw this really great thing. You want me to pick one up for you? Yeah, it costs $50. Fine. How can I send you $50 without, going into the matrix or without, tremendous difficulty? Oh, so, it didn't take very long for us to realize that, we need money.
Were you following at the time this evolution of the attempts of creating a digital currency?
Loosely. What happened was in about 1998, all of a sudden we got something called eGold. And eGold, it wasn't exactly our stuff, but it worked. And it was gold in a warehouse with encrypted connections into your account. You could do whatever you want with it, and it was actual gold. And you could, with a few clicks, send your buddy $23.34 for a two penny transfer fee, or whatever the actual numbers were. And it was wonderful. And that lasted for about 10 years. Actually, My personal thinking is that it was the takeover of eGold by the feds. They came in and they just took it over. I mean, they just shut it down. Doug Jackson, who was a doctor, the guy who started and ran it, almost went to jail, very nearly went to jail. But I think it was the takedown of eGold that gave Satoshi a push to finish coding Bitcoin. I mean, Satoshi was clearly a genius, and he was clearly in our group because this is where everything came together. We had public key cryptography, we had hash trees, we had proof of work, we had reusable proof of work, we had BitTorrent. It all came out of our group. And somebody, I don't know who, put the whole thing together and put the essential little piece of mining in there, which made the whole thing work, and put it out. But I think eGold it was obvious that eGold was in deep trouble in 2007. And I don't really know this, but my guess is that's when Satoshi started to get serious. And you can see in some of Satoshi's emails or posts, I forget which, where he says, we don't want something they can't cut the head off of like they have with the electronic gold systems. So Satoshi was very much aware of this. And I suspect that that played at least some motivational role.
I suppose that you used eGold at the time.
Oh, sure.
Was denominated in dollars? So what you were sending is dollar back in gold, or it was gold unit, like grams? You were paying in grams, or?
It was so many grams of gold. And it would show you, today that's equal to $23.6. But you were sending gold, you weren't sending dollars.
Okay, but people, I suppose that there were internet website services that they allow you to pay in eGold, and they were just converting in the last moment to know what was the cost in grams of that product.
I don't know exactly what most of them were doing, but I know some of them were very happy to keep their gold. They didn't want to convert it to dollars.
No. I mean, just the denomination. Like, for example, if they were charging you for a service of $100 and they allowed you to pay in. So it was just that in the last moment, they were telling, okay, I accept you eGold, and this will be whatever grams of eGold.
Right, exactly so.
Okay, interesting. I mean, in the path of the creation of Bitcoin, there was different attempts. Ones that were just in theory, they never were put in practice. eGold was one that was used and it lasted. There was also the Liberty Reserve, who also was there. And it's amazing how they were killing everybody who had a post office, a headquarters. They were going there. That's why Satoshi, he had to be in the group. He had to know all these stories because he was so sure about what he was doing, and the anonymity, his pseudonym, and so on, how carefully he protected himself. He knew what happens when you don't do the things in that way.
Unquestionably, whoever he, she, or they were part of the group.
Okay, I want to start entering the book, and I want to say that I have some spoiler-free questions, and maybe we can jump into more at the end into a spoiler-full questions. But yeah, a lodging of Wayfaring Men. How I got to read this book? Well, it was different factors, but first of all, it was Max Hillebrand in Riga last year in Baltic Honey Badger. I met him, and he was all about your book. And what are you doing? Oh, I read this book. You have to read it. And what is it about? And then he couldn't stop talking. And I said, okay, I will give it a try. Of course, everyday life takes over. But then he recorded this book in audiobook. And I said, oh my God, this is many hours. And he did that. It has to be good. Okay, I will give it a try. I tried, but in English, again, busy and so on, it didn't catch. And then Entropy told me that he was doing the Spanish version. I said, okay, I'll be a proofreader. And oh my God, it is easy, because what Max told me, how he sold me the book was like, look, you have to read it because it's everything we talk, but in one book. It's kind of like Atlas Shrugged, but in cypherpunk world. And it predicts Silk Road. It predicts, in a way, what Bitcoin enabled later. It didn't predict Bitcoin because we will talk about it. Monetarily, it is not very specific. And also it predicts the impact that Silk Road will have to governments and how governments would react. Just to clarify, the book was published, I believe, if the date is correct, in internet is the 1st of January 2007. So
it was actually published in 2002, October of 02.
How is this? How is this story? I want to know.
Oh, I published it anonymously. My name didn't go on it till 07, but it was actually published in 02.
As it is today, without changes, let's say, or it was a different version?
No, it was pretty close. I mean, I've, fixed up a little bit, a couple little things, this was spelled wrong. I had, not very good editing in those days, but, I fixed a few things, but it's almost exactly the same. But in 02, I didn't want to put my name on it. It was dangerous. I had children. I didn't want, it was not too long after 9/11, and I wasn't interested in, becoming, an absent dad if somebody decided that I was, stirring up the bad guys, which is crazy because the book doesn't even talk about anything like that. The book is extremely peaceful, nonviolent, whatever. But, when people get worked up, you never know. So my name wasn't on it till 07.
Which makes it even more crazy because, again, it predicts Silk Road. But I thought that it was like, okay, Silk Road 2013, I believe. So, and Bitcoin 2 years later, 2007, 2009. But no, this is crazy. It was 7 years before Bitcoin and 11 years before Silk Road. But okay, I have many questions about this. First of all, which were your inspirations? Of course, I understand the cypherpunks, the cryptography. What else is under?
It's funny. You think about this stuff. First of all, I'll just say that to write the book was not really something that I consciously decided. It was just something that started growing in me and I had to do. I was already an experienced writer at that point. I'd written lots of technical books, lots of books. But so I had the skills to write, but it wasn't something I ever thought I would do. And I had to do it. My inspirations, it's really hard to say. Certainly, well, to be honest about it, my mom was very important to me. Thomas Jefferson was very important to me. I had one of my epiphany moments sitting there on the wall of a classroom when I was in high school, reading the first 2 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. And if anybody hasn't read them, please go read them. But the American Declaration of Independence, just the first part, I read that, I went, that's what I believe. I don't care. I don't think anybody else does, but I believe that, and that's right. That was important to me. The Bible has been very, very important to me. That's probably the thing I've read more than anything else. Ayn Rand mattered to me. By the time I wrote this book, I had already found that there were a lot of things in Miss Rand's work that I didn't quite agree with her. But boy, she addressed the right questions. She really did, especially if you're going back to the 1980s and 1990s. There was a real, it was a desert for our kind of thinking. And you found Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead, and you went, oh, this is good. And, as it turns out, there's parts of it I disagree with her on a number of things, but my God, I am in such a debt of gratitude to her. She asked the right questions and addressed them intelligently. So that was a big thing on me. Of course, the Cypherpunks group, and probably a dozen other things. It's hard for even to put them all together.
Did you have in mind some Austrian economists like Rothbard at the time?
No, I let's see. At that time, I knew of Rothbard. I had read one of his books, Towards a New Liberty, I think was the title of it. Liked it a lot. gleaned a lot from it, but I wasn't too much into Austrian economics. What I read, I really liked, but I wasn't deep in it.
And what about Parallelní Polis? What about that text of Václav Benda? Were you familiar with it already?
No, I wasn't. I wish I had been, but I wasn't familiar with it at that time. I was very familiar with the idea of parallel societies, of the world does this, we do this, which is biblical and all sorts of other things as well. So I loved the idea, but I wasn't familiar with that work at the time.
How it was then for you to first see the birth of Bitcoin and see the birth of Silk Road? Because your book is more Silk Road than Bitcoin. So you are more into Ross Ulbricht camp. And of course, he needed Bitcoin to build that. As you were saying, you in the 90s, you were needing a digital cash. So, but your book is more Silk Road than Bitcoin. How it was for you to see this?
Well, first of all, with Bitcoin, it's important to remember that Cypherpunks was really quiet during that era. I mean, Jonathan Logan and I, we ran a company called Cryptography, which were essentially selling, really good encryption and really good systems for using encryption.
Kind of VPN or what was it?
Yeah, it was a type of a VPN. It was a VPN with a specific anonymity network where we had servers all over the world and the traffic bounced this way
like a mixnet to relay packages all around the world, so that from the network point of view, you didn't know where this was coming and so on.
It was a professionally operated mixnet.
Okay.
It was a dark net is what it really was. So, and we ran that from, we began it in 2005 and had to close it in 20 or 21.
You had to due to lack
it's a
of
long
use,
story.
Okay.
No, we were pushed out. So that's a long story. Let me save that for another time. But I was really busy during those years running Crypto Hippie. It was a business. It's hard. It keeps you busy. So I didn't hear about Bitcoin immediately. I heard about it, sometime in 2009. It dropped in January. And sometime in 2009, I heard about it. I said, oh, that's nice. Good. Somebody did something. Because like I say, Cypherpunks was pretty dry at the time. But I was busy. I was busy running a company, which anyone who's done it knows that it's hard. So I was busy with that. Then about 2010, of all things, WikiLeaks was giving him a really hard time. And so I wrote a defense of Bitcoin in sometime in 2010. I don't remember exactly when. So I wrote that, but I still, wasn't involved. I was busy. We supported the cause, but I really didn't. I didn't read the white paper for years. And then when I finally said, I really need to read the white paper. I got to take some time out of my schedule to fit this in. Okay. Oh, it's only 8 or 9 pages. Okay, fine. And I read it and went, oh, this is good. This is really good. We got to support these guys. And so, that's when I got involved. That's when I began to take it a little more seriously. I mean, we were supporting him before that, but, there's just too many things to do in a day. And then Silk Road, some young friends of mine started telling me about it. And it's like, really? Yeah? Oh, that's cool. Wow. Okay. And then I was so happy when a young friend of mine said to me, you know what, the buying and selling is one thing, but the really important stuff is the forum. And he says, I'm going to send you a bunch of stuff that I pulled off the forum. And it was wonderful. It was the people were serious. They had good ideas. They were talking about them. They were talking about good books. They were talking about how we ought to live, what's right and what's wrong and why. I mean, these were, adult, serious discussions. It wasn't just, dude, I want to get high. It was really good discussions. Gosh, that was so nice to see. That did me a lot of good to see that. And then later I found out that there was a pretty strong connection from my book to Ross, but I didn't know that originally.
What was the connection? I don't know the story. Is there a connection? Like, did he read it or something like that?
Oh yeah, no, he read it, and it was actually, it's in the Silk Road trial transcript. A mutual friend, a mutual friend told Ross, Ross was playing with these ideas, and the friend said, "You got to read this book," and he did. So, Ross was already doing those types of things already. How much effect the book had, I don't know. I mean, I've never actually seen Ross except from across a courtroom, and we didn't have a chance to hang out. But it was certainly a connection between the two of us.
How are you enjoying the conversation with Paul so far? Refreshing, isn't it? I strongly recommend that you take action and read Paul's book, A Lodging of Wayfaring Men. You will see that it breathes Bitcoin and freedom from the very first lines. And let this also serve as a quick warning. We are about to drop some spoilers from now on, but honestly, they are very light and won't really spoil anything, I would say. So feel free to keep going or pause and come back after you read it. Since we have paused for a moment, let me take you a few seconds more to tell you more about my 4 travel companions, my sponsors, who make this podcast possible. First, HODL, the platform where I interact with other individuals to buy or sell Bitcoin whenever I need to. Just last month, I was in Barcelona for a while and I needed some cash, and I sold 500 euros worth of Bitcoin using HODL and using HAL Cash as a payment system. It's super convenient and secure for the seller, without ever giving up any personal information. That's how you can stack and sell Bitcoin, turbocharged, ultravitaminado, as I would say in Spanish, while keeping your privacy by visiting hodlhodl.com. Then there is Bitrefill, another sponsor, big supporter since the very beginning, and I think you should know his website because there you can directly buy everything you do already, but using Bitcoin. For example, I put gas in my car thanks to Bitrefill, I buy groceries, I buy clothes in Zara, I buy anything I need in Amazon. You just go to bitrefill.com, pick the service, pay the selected amount with Bitcoin, and done. The voucher is instantly ready to use. Thanks to Bitrefill, living on Bitcoin has never been easier. And if you are not in the spending mood and you are more of a hodler, you will definitely want to check out Coldcard, the most iconic hardware devices for storing your Bitcoin securely for the long term. The kind of freedom that you can feel from today's talk with Paul can only be experienced with self-custody, and also with the peace of mind that comes from knowing that your Bitcoin is safe with the highest security possible. So if it's time for you to level up your security, take a look at CoinKite's Coldcard. You will love them. And finally, I think that you will go crazy over my last sponsor, which is Bitronics, bringing from Spain to the whole world their BitAccess, NetQ Access, and other small home mining devices. With this, you can enter this fascinating rabbit hole without noise or excessive electricity cost, while adding hash rate to the Bitcoin network and participating in the decentralized lottery of 3.125 Bitcoin that every 10 minutes takes place. It's that simple. Check their catalog, but a fair warning, they are addictive. And once you start, you will want more, maybe to stack even sats directly mined by you. You will find more information about HODL, Bitrefill, CoinKite, and Bitronics in the description below. And now, back with Paul.
I think that this is the best moment to set the firewall of spoilers. So from this point on, maybe we will not spoil a lot, but just be aware that maybe some names come and we can spoil your reading. So better go back, read. I recommend it, and now you can find it in Spanish. And I know Entropy did a great job. I enjoyed it a lot. So go read. You can also read the original version in English, and then you can come back. Okay. for you to know, I start seasons on October, more or less, of the podcast. Now is the 7th season. And this last one, I started with Parallel Nipolis story. So I read the text and I said, yeah, this is amazing. This needs a show. So I did from Prague Spring to Parallel Nipolis. And reading the book, one of the books that changed my life was Atlas Shrugged. And together with Parallel Nipolis, reading your book, I was amazed. I couldn't stop. And it has everything. It goes from to answer questions like, for example, why I am just living to survive. So there is talk about government. There is talk about taxation, which I believe is one of the reasons why you probably used a pseudonym in the beginning, because it's so radical about that. So I don't know, maybe I will take it from here, like governments and taxations, how these ideas got to you. Like it was all this cypherpunk mailing list, cryptography mailing list. It was all these ideas were already there, or maybe it was the Bible that took you to think like that.
Well, what it really comes down to is just learning to examine things for what they actually are, not as they're advertised to be. To really look at the root things. But, to some extent, it really was the Bible. Not entirely, but the Bible is an anarchist book. I don't care what people try to say about it, and they try to take one little part and make it into something else and find the one part that they hate and act like that's the only thing that matters in the book. This is a large book put together over 1,000 years. You want to find some little part to hate? Okay, well, go ahead. But I think you're much smarter if you find parts in it that are useful. But, the very first story about this is where the people of Israel want to have a king. And the prophet at that era, a guy named Samuel, said, no, you don't want this. This is a bad idea. They're going to do this to you. They're all the things we talk about. They're going to take your stuff. They're going to, all this kind of stuff. And Samuel goes to God, and God says, look, they haven't rejected you. They've rejected me. So there's nothing you can do about it. And all sorts of other parts of it. But that's all through the book. So that must have had some effect on me. But it's really when you actually look at things at the root causes. What are they really? And yeah, we're used to it, but does that make it okay? Does that make it right, even though my grandpa did it? My grandpa was a good man. My mom and dad did it, and my mom and dad were good people. Can I really say they were wrong? Well, yeah, I can. They were good people. But you know what? Humans at this point in development, we're all wrong about things. And the people in the future are going to look back and say, oh, yeah, they were nice people, but they really missed on this. Okay, fine. That's where we are. But when you look at the root of what this stuff really is, it's coercion. And it's not good for us, and other systems would be massively better. So once you actually take a look at it like that, and you go, okay, well, some people won't like this, but it's true anyway, so I'm going to say it.
The reasoning of this book, that's why I asked you about Rothbard, because I feel that it has a lot of the same reasoning that Rothbard has about when he builds his science of morality, or of what is good, what is bad, what is accepted, and what shouldn't. And it all goes or all starts with private property, and it basically says like this is like a natural right, and because of that you don't have the right to use coercion to ask for my property. Your book is a lot about that. And for me, the moment that I said, okay, wow, this is getting more interesting, because when you talk about taxation, people is a bit afraid of talking about taxation. Is a bit afraid of saying what everybody's thinking about. Is a bit afraid of saying taxation is theft and we shouldn't allow it. It's not that I'm saying we should pay less. I'm saying that we should pay nothing. And when you develop all that, I would say, theory or how the main characters explain to other people why they shouldn't pay, I really got interested in something you say there. That is, you can say that, and some people is afraid of saying it, because of the reaction of saying it. And it's not the reaction from governments. Of course, government will also say, no, this is bad. This is bad, and you might go to jail if you keep going like that. But it's the reaction of regular people, because we are prepared to be a slave in a way.
It's the easy way. There's no social pain involved. It's the easy thing to do because everyone's already done it, and humans are really good at finding justifications for choices they've already made. We've done it before. We've all done it before. I don't want to change it. Everyone's going to hate me if I call them wrong. And humans are very good at justifying that. But at some point, you got to say, guys, this is a bad model. We need to cooperate in better ways than this. We need to work together in better ways than this. This is a really bad model. And by the way, it comes from the Bronze Age. What else are we still using from the Bronze Age in its almost its original form? It's a bad model. We need to move on. And it's not trying to slash and burn at anything. It's just that, sorry guys, it's just a bad model. We have to move on to something better. Now, how can we do that? Well, let's think about it. And then you come up with ideas.
This that people is or gets even violent. And I'm not talking government. I'm talking your friends, your family. This that people can get violent when you tell them like, no, we shouldn't pay. This is unfair. This is theft. It shouldn't happen. Do you think that this is something that we got to learn, or they got to program us in that way during centuries of, now it became like a common knowledge, like as you say in the book, a natural power, or it's just a human nature in a way?
Well, it's mostly human nature. I mean, it has been done on purpose, and it has been promoted on purpose, and every election, every whatever, they promote these ideas, and they're always trying to make people afraid. I mean, elections anymore aren't about ideas. It's that the other guy is a monster, so you have to vote for me. They're whatever radical crazy, and they're going to destroy everything. You have to vote for me. And it's just about scaring people. We could be living so much better than we are now. The world could be so much better than it is now. The way we're doing it is from the Bronze Age. To be very honest about it, it's a primate model. The hierarchy of the few ruling the many. And we have one small group of people who gets to set the rules and punish everyone who doesn't keep them. That they take money by force or threat of force, whatever, and are little accountable for it, and presuming that we're too stupid, we're too morally corrupt, that we wouldn't spend the money very well, but they will. And they'll spend it better than we will. I mean, it's crazy. But that's the way it is, and everyone's used to it. And the truth is that people get very used to things. They like to have their way and not think about it any further. They're busy, they have kids. I understand. They want it easy. And when you hit certain borders, a certain number of them will freak out. And that's just the price of progress. That's just the way it goes. You have to let them call you names. Eventually, it will change. It is changing. I mean, Bitcoin, my God, we're setting the terms of the debate. Bitcoin has actually changed the terms of the debate in the United States and a whole lot of other places. Oh my God, that's seems almost impossible, but it's already happened. So when you let people call you names and say, oh, you're just crazy. That guy, he's nuts. No one could ever believe the crazy stuff. He's just, something's wrong with that guy. When you do that and you persist, it's only a matter of time before things begin to change. Well, sometimes it takes decades. I've been screaming for years that this is a marathon, not a sprint. Because, especially when you're young, I mean, no one was probably more guilty of this than me when I was young. I want it now. You know, it doesn't work that way. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But it works. And my God, how far we've come. It does work. And it just, sometimes you just got to be willing to let people call you names. Smile, love them, and just keep going.
It's in Atlas Shrugged, one of the things that stick, and Atlas Shrugged is 1,200 pages long, but it is that it has some phases in the book and some speeches that they stick. I remember Francisco d'Anconia, the speech about money, why money is not evil.
Classic.
I even recorded a podcast just reading it because it changed things in me, and it's true. I grew up with this knowledge of money is evil. It brings evil in you. That speech is amazing. It has plenty of speeches, and I think that your book has a similar thing. That there are conversations which I love because this is in the cypherpunk era. So there are conversations that are in chat rooms. So you can see the nicknames talking to each other, but they are conversations so deep, and they are speeches. They are like moments of the book that I remember, and I will remember for long. And in this concept of talking about taxation is a deep topic, of course, and it's not that it's solved. Like if we take taxation away, that we have the system where we're going already right away with no failure. It's something that maybe some areas need to be developed still. But there is this speech about why people react the way they do when you talk about taxation, with Michael is telling to Francis at some point. And because somebody in the book reacts bad to or is afraid about what can come out of having free market, that nobody has the obligation of paying taxes because they cannot be found. They are doing everything anonymously. So how are you going to tax what you don't see? And then that speech for me is also great because you can see why people react, how they react, and why you have to be ready for that reaction. So the book is also like a manual if you need some tooling to answer people or to help people to be awake. It has in it. But as we can see, of course, I don't want to spoil a lot. I want to spoil a bit, but not a lot. But moving on, okay, governments, they execute their power, their monopoly on checking everything you do, and then they execute taxation because they force you to show everything you do, and then they tax you, okay? So the moment that something appears that they don't see what is happening, I believe Bitcoin was a failure in the matrix, and then Silk Road appears, and of course, it is understandable if you see it from this point of view, if a system appears that allows people not to pay tax, that they are gonna retaliate with all their power. And this is basically what you in the book, you have even a sentence here that, an extract. Look, you wrote it in English, entropy translated to Spanish, and this is translated back to English. So probably are not your words, but more or less, okay? But it's something like this. It says, and the final question, let's say we truly unleash real freedom upon the face of the earth. What will happen when the rulers begin to lose their power? How ruthless will they become? And then Philip answers, for this, I don't have a good answer. With Silk Road, we saw the answer. We saw what happens to Ross. It keeps on happening. It's not something from the past. Now we have Tornado Cash guys. In Trial, we have Samurai wallet. Keeps on happening. In the book, you leave it open, but is it stronger than you imagine or what you expected?
No, it was about what I would expect. Look, this is there's different ways to describe it. This is the king getting ticked off and chopping off a few heads and putting them on a pike in front of the palace to scare everybody else off. It's that brutal. That's what it is, or what it was. You can also compare it to a primate troop. The big baboon is pissed, and he's going to slap around a bunch of people and make examples out of them. It's the same. It's the same pathology. It's the same problem. It's what happens when you give people massive power. It's just decentralization stops that. It doesn't stop all evil. There's bad things can happen under decentralization too, but they're not rewarded. They're not supported. They're not held in position. Yeah, people can do stupid things, and they will. That's just life on this planet. But they won't have everybody else's involuntary support. When you get these systems where somebody is supported by money extracted from others against their will, not convinced, but frightened into doing it, well, where's the feedback mechanism? Where's the balancing mechanism? It's either badly broken or gone. And so this type of thing is just going to keep going as long as we have that. So really the important thing is to keep making this point and make people aware of it. Because humans are not naturally stupid. Actually, naturally, they're kind of geniuses. But there's so much conditioning and history. It's not like it can't be fixed. It can easily be fixed. It's already been fixed, and thousands or millions of us have already said, maybe not. That's not a good idea. Well, millions of us have come to that point just in the last couple of decades. So it's not that it can't be fixed, but it remains an issue. And people have to understand that the problems like that are nature. It's just the nature of the system. It's not even because they have some bad guys operating the system. No, it's the nature of the system. That's why we need to move to something else. It's not going to be particularly hard to do. There'll be a lot of screaming along the way. There has been some bloodshed, and there may be more, unfortunately. But what are we going to do? Keep doing the thing that is proven not to work for 5,000 years? I mean, how many leaders for how many thousand years have been saying, "Oh, we're going to stop war and protect you"? Right. That happens all the time. There was a study done years ago. The last 6,000 years had 200 years that didn't have a war in them out of 6,000. So how well is this model doing? Not. And so it's time to start looking at alternatives.
I really like what you just said, that it's not that they are bad guys, it's just, you said it's the system, it's how it works. It's basically a defense mechanism that it has. And the same way that when we get a virus or our body reacts and tries to kick it out, Silk Road was a virus, a huge one. And this is maybe the question, understanding or having this perspective that you get from reading the book, this double life sentence that Ross got, it was a message. It was a message to whoever dared to do the same or continue to walk that path.
Absolutely. No question about it. It was a rigged trial. I was there for not all of it, but I was there for part of it. It was a rigged trial. And I've got a pretty fair amount of experience in the U.S. legal system professionally. This was a rigged trial. And they did it to have a head on the pike in front of the palace to scare everyone away. There's no doubt in my mind.
For Ross to do what he did, of course he did mistakes. I suppose everybody does. Everybody's human. And in privacy, I mean, in the book, you talk a lot about privacy, and everybody who is involved with the project, first of all, is, okay, I need to set up a computer for you, or I need to send you the instructions so that you can connect, because you need to follow some privacy procedures to not expose yourself. It feels that in the past, you could be private in the digital realm. But nowadays, you somehow can gain some degree of privacy, but it feels that it's starting to be a nightmare. It's starting to be very hard to remain private in the internet that we have nowadays. Maybe because we have to use, or we are forced to use, many of these walled gardens that you mentioned before, many of these services. But it feels very hard. And if you add to the equation artificial intelligence, then it's starting to be like a mission impossible for Tom Cruise, maybe, to find privacy. Do you see it like me? Like it's starting to be an even more technical thing now? to remain private?
In some areas, that's true. It's not necessarily. It's never impossible. It's never going to be impossible. But it got harder, and certainly if you use any of these walled gardens, again, Google, Facebook, name them, forget about it. They know, these are the greatest gift the intelligence agencies ever received, ever. Facebook, you've got 3-5 billion people that tell you everything they had for breakfast. They tell you, you can know anything from that. And of course, they're very, very good at influencing people's opinions. So that's really difficult. Forget about it if you do that. You don't. But privacy is super important because it allows us to develop independently as independent people. It takes privacy and anonymity. I'll just put the two in one bag here rather than taking the time to separate them. When we grow up, we have to have stupid ideas. I know I did when I was young. I think anybody who's young and uses their voice at all has some stupid ideas because it's the nature of growing up. If those ideas are permanent, and if you are going to suffer for them permanently, it restricts human development, and badly. You're afraid to speak. You learn to self-censor by the time you're 10. This is not healthy. This is not good. We need to be able to do stupid things without getting slammed, without being destroyed in the process of doing them. We're all going to do stupid things at some point, but we need to be insulated from punishment for just having a stupid idea. So anonymity allows us to have that. It gives us room to develop, to make our own mistakes and learn from them. So you have to be able to make your own mistakes. Otherwise, you're just always living by some external standard rather than living from yourself. You have to, everything that really matters is inside of us. And we have to learn how to fix that and how to improve it and how to make it better. Every time we refer to external standards, I'm not allowed to do this. So-and-so says I can't do this. Every time you do that, you're shortcutting your personal development. You have to be able to make your mistakes, recognize them, learn from them, develop the self-discipline, the will to not do them again. Once you do those things, you become a full being, a full person. But if everything is external, we're going to keep everybody safe and not allow anybody to use this word, okay? You shortcut human development, and not a little, a lot. So anonymity and privacy are of far more importance than just, stiffing the tax man or something like that. This is important for human development.
Yeah. And we had a corner in London, the Speaker's Corner. I don't know if it was in Hyde Park or in which park it was, no? I think
it was Hyde Park.
And I don't know when it was this, but it was like 3 or 2 centuries ago. I don't know exactly, but it was a place where if you were not touching British land, you were able to say whatever you want. And I believe it's needed, because if you censor yourself, and this is also why privacy in personal finance is so important, because if you know that somebody is watching you, which basically is what is happening with banks and digital money, the dollars that we have in our bank, everybody knows that they're being watched and that the tax man is going to be informed. So what people does is they apply self-censorship. And this is very bad, because as another concept that we will not have time to talk about it, but that you develop in the book, and which I love, is this human energy, that is a creation power, which basically is destroyed or reduced to a 5% when you add taxation, when you add regulation, when you add lack of privacy, self-censorship. At the end, you had all the superpowers in the world, but you decide to not use them. or you accept to not use them. So this is a very interesting concept. But just before finishing, 2 questions. I want to know your opinion. First of all, we will not talk about leadership, but I love it. I will leave it for readers to find it. How you talk about how dangerous can be leadership if you don't know when to leave in the right time. Satoshi gave a great lesson about it. And yeah, it's good that the book was written before, because if not, it would feel that you got inspiration through Satoshi. But no, I believe it's more coming from the Bible and so on. But it's an amazing how leadership, it can be against this creativity that we were just, this creator power that we just mentioned. But okay, not this. Another topic that you touch is defense. And in this time, of course, this is one of the violence is what they use against you to apply coercion, to make you pay taxes, to make you obey. But in this time after Bitcoin, we saw also the birth of 3D printing, and we saw how Cody Wilson created the first 3D printed gun. So basically, whoever had a 3D printer at home could start printing guns. So could start creating his own defense. How it was for you to see also that moment?
Well, again, I think defense is necessary, but I hope it never has to happen. I'm massively against violence. All the people who talk about, oh yeah, I'm going to have my gun and let them come try to take it away. You don't want to shoot an actual human being. You don't want to have to do these things. Yes, there's a time that it does have, that it is necessary. Not for most of us. Most of us will never see that moment, but some of us will. And when that happens, it is immensely immoral to try to say somebody can't have a tool to protect themselves from an evil person, somebody who's just a destroyer. Tell me I have to just stand there and not defend myself? That's evil. Oh, well, we'll do it. No, you won't. BS. It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, if it does sometimes, great. I'm glad, but it just doesn't. And so if you tell people that they're not allowed to protect themselves, then you're partners with their killers. But at the same time, we really want to, pray that we don't never do this, because even if you're 100% in the right, and you do it and nobody else gets hurt, which very often somebody else does get hurt by accident because these are sloppy, nasty things. But even if in the best situation, you don't want to live that you killed another human being. I mean, it's not good for you. It's just not. And the guys who have actually done it usually don't talk about it because it stays with them and really bothers them. That it's possible for people to do this. Where I live, it's you can get a gun if you want one. It's not particularly difficult. For people in other places, especially if they're in a dangerous place, yeah, they should be armed. You want to be very, all the usual caveats. Be careful, don't leave it around children, all those sorts of things that nobody needs me to tell them. They're just a reasonable human being. They can figure that out in 10 seconds. But yeah, it's necessary for people to be able to defend themselves because there are evil people in the world, not that many, but enough to be a concern. And you have to, if you're going to protect good people, there is a moment when that is necessary, sadly enough.
I think that whoever reads the book will understand what you just said. But maybe just to close this topic is, did you see when this gun was designed and it started, I wouldn't say an industry because nobody is, or maybe very little people is earning money on this, but let's say a new line of thought and development appear. Did you see also like an evolution the same way that when Bitcoin appeared or Silk Road appeared, did you say like, yeah, this had to appear and we are just
oh yeah,
seeing
you knew that had to happen. there were always workarounds. You could take a piece of plumbing pipe and a shotgun shell and a nail and a board and turn it into a makeshift shotgun. They've always had that kind of stuff, but it had to happen. It had to happen because human self-defense is a basic human necessity. I mean, it's sad that it is that way, but it is. So yeah, I saw that and I was like, okay, well, it had to happen. Eventually they'll find some bad guy using one somewhere and it'll be headlines all over the world, but that's the price of progress.
For closing, I tell you that reading your book was so refreshing because it came back some ideas that I have with me. But it really made me go out and scream. And this week I have this conference in Barcelona and I have a speech there and it's mostly inspired by your book. The title is, it's something, I don't know how I put the title, but it's something like, we won. When are we going to celebrate it? Because reading your book is I see is like, okay, Gamma is already out. It's not even Gamma, it's even better than Gamma. We have Bitcoin. And Bitcoin can build way more things than Gamma. We can have Gamma and we can have other stuff happening. Even now we can store wealth in the long run. And this is something that in the book, you are not very sure about how to treat it. It's like you probably, with those early days, now I understand more. It was 2002, so there was not much to hold in that time. But yeah, we have more than in the book. So when are we going to celebrate it? When are we going to use it?
This has been a topic for me the last few years. Guys, we're winning. We're really winning. Winning's a bad word, but whatever. You get the idea. We're winning. We're doing well. We're setting the terms of the debate. We're doing well. We need to appreciate that we're right, accept that we've been right, not stop fighting about it, trying to prove ourselves anymore. We've been right. Not about every little detail, but essentially we've been right. Let's be happy about it. Let's find ways forward. Let's hack forward and where we're going to go, and let's help people next to us where they are now and help them move forward. We're doing well. We just need to keep going and, just stay with your principles. Stay with what you believe. Work out of yourself rather than some external standard.
The system is so bad. And we're in a stage, and I know that we can go even in a deeper evil stage and living even in worse conditions. I only have to look at Cuba or Venezuela to know that we still can get way worse. But nevertheless, even in the so-called first world, we are surviving, as I was saying at the beginning. A lot of people is surviving. They are not living, they're just surviving. And I believe that there is so many parallel institutions, parallel structures that we can build right away. I don't understand why we don't have easy markets, nothing related with drugs. No, markets of connecting producers with consumers, and really nobody needs to know, or it's on their, like in the book, it's on their decision what to do with taxes. And they can do everything as they want. So really, why we don't use it?
It takes people time. It takes long periods of time for people to get used to it. We've had Bitcoin for 15 years, going on 16 years, whatever. It takes time. People change slowly. They have to admit that what they were doing previously wasn't really the best way to do it. And that's hard for people to take. So it takes time, but we're really doing well, and we just need to keep saying what we think and keep building the things that we think are good.
So I will say just invite people to get some Bitcoin because it might be very useful. I'm not talking in a speculative way. It also might be also good, but just get some of that money that can buy you things that other way you couldn't. Get some of it, put it on the side, and maybe soon, I hope, you will be able to
Listen,
use
it's the best way of not only doing business, to do commercial transactions. It's now the best way of moving wealth through time that has ever existed, better than gold. And I like gold.
Plenty of reasons. But I hope that we can give it some use, and I hope that the lodging of Wayfaring Men can be a blueprint to ideas, not to actions in specific, but to ideas of what can come now that we have the tools and the tooling. We have the Bitcoin, but we also have plenty of wallets, and every day getting easier and easier. We can spin up a market with a PTC Pay server, and we have Lightning. Really, it's so easy. So I hope that a lot of people read your book, which now I know it's from 2002, and all these ideas flow between us. Paul, thank you very much for this talk and for the extra time I stole you. I would have stolen way more. So, so I hope that I can speak with you another day.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
And I have to meet you in person.
My pleasure.